Hey, what's up everybody? This is Ergo Josh, and guess what? It's Tutorial Friday, as you can see right there. Just kidding, but we're still going to do a tutorial today. Today we're going to talk about drawing, thinking, and seeing in 3D and what exercises you can do to actually improve that without drawing boxes everywhere. So let's get right into it. We're going to be talking today about cross contours and how to use them to take your drawings and your studies to the next level, and how they're actually going to even help you with your shading later on once you get really good at this. So let me tell you what cross contours are. You can see them here on this figure that I did already, and cross contours are basically just consistent slices through an object, usually at evenly spaced intervals that go completely through on the same plane. So basically think about as if we took her, like imagine a James Bond spy mission where there's a grid of lasers, except there's only horizontal ones. And we just grab her and we push her through the lasers. Let's pretend it's like an anime, so she stays in one piece for a moment. And if we just push her through the lasers, she's gonna have all of these cuts on her body. And all of those cuts will be lines on her body before she inevitably falls apart. But I'm sorry I had to go there, but this is the easiest way I could think of to explain it. And that's basically what we're doing. We're drawing where those lines would be if we pushed her body through the laser. To make it even simpler, all you really need to do is think of basically making everything into a giant, oddly shaped, striped cylinder. Imagine making anything you see just this striped cylinder. Just draw all the lines, super thin stripes to be honest, but they're still stripes in a sense. Now at a glance this may look easy to you. Let me actually turn off the image so you see what it actually ends up looking like, but it's much harder than it looks. As you can see here, you can tell this result still looks exactly like what it's supposed to. You can tell it's a woman bending over, holding her knees, right? It's very clear. It shouldn't be difficult to tell what it is at all because I did them properly. And I'm going to tell you how to do these properly so that you're just not mindlessly tracing things and not learning. Because if you do this right, you're going to end up not wanting to do it. You're going to end up tired, a little bit frustrated, and you might get a headache if you do it for a few hours because it's a learning activity. You're really training your brain to think and see things in 3D space. So now we're going to look at this one, for example, and I want to tell you some things that you want to avoid and you want to think about while you're doing these. So first off, we're going to try to avoid creating a wireframe. And a wireframe is basically any 3D model where you see the wires of the different polygons that make up the surface of the model. And I'll show that here in a moment. But you don't want to draw that. You want to draw these lines again, like I said, as if you push the entire form through a laser grid. But of course, that doesn't really work. Some areas would be too difficult. And so you're going to break everything down into different sections where you find the object normal direction. So let me show you what that is. Because to be honest, the reason I'm doing this is because I know that not everyone has experience with 3D programs and all that in school. Maybe they didn't go to art school or whatever. And so I want to help you guys be able to think this way as well. So first thing we're going to do is try to break down every single part of the body that kind of goes in its own direction. So you can see here we have the legs, the main torso, the main part of the torso, the spine here, and then we have the rib cage going in a slightly different direction. We have the arm, upper arm, then the lower part of the arm going horizontally, then the neck is going up, and then the head is even going in a different direction. Then we can see I did a little bit for the hands here, and then the other part of the arm, and then this pole that she's holding. So every major component has a direction it's going in. And the way we're gonna do this is we're gonna make every single cylinder that we draw, right? I mean, not really cylinder, but the stripe that we draw, we're going to try to make it perpendicular. And I hope you know your shapes and your basic, geometry terms here. Perpendicular basically means it creates a 90-degree angle with something, right? We're not going to draw them like this. We're not going to draw the contours wrapping like that. They have to be perpendicular to this normal we found. And the normal is usually the direction of the object that we're talking about. Now, I'm going to get into a little bit more geometry here, but I say cylinder, but everything is going to not be a cylinder, so we can kind of just think of it as an ellipse. A cylinder is basically when it's a circle, right? And then it comes down like that. I can draw the dotted lines for what's behind the form, and then that's the cylinder, right? And then this would be the cross contour for the middle of the cylinder. This would be the bottom. This would be the top that we see. But in reality, most objects that we're going to do this with are going to be some form like this, where there's going to be a major axis and a minor axis. I hope I don't have those reversed, but we're going to be trying to make sure this major axis is perpendicular to this line when we draw it, right? We don't want it to be kind of like at an angle. We want to try to make sure it's all very perpendicular. That way, when we do make that contour and I'm going to draw through and guess the other side of our arm, it actually looks correct. And we're going to continue to make every single one perpendicular along this line. Again, something that's not perpendicular would look like this, where that major axis is not perpendicular. We're not getting that 90-degree angle. See, this angle is acute. It's much less than 90 degrees. 90 degrees would be like this. And as you can see, it cuts in between that. That's not what we want. This is much closer. As you can see here, that is a nice 90-degree angle. And that's how we want to keep every single ellipse or cross contour that we draw. But it's hard because we can't really always be drawing the entire thing like this. We want to just draw the side that we can see. This side over here is going to be something that we don't draw. And it's still hard because we need to pay attention that not everything on the surface is a perfectly smooth shape like this. We're going to follow the anatomy of what we're drawing. So that's the cool thing about this, because what you want to do is be as detailed as possible. So here, just knowing some of anatomy for the stomach and the fats and all that stuff in this abdomen area, I know that her belly button is going to be kind of a concave area here, and then it's going to come out, and then we're going to head over to the obliques. And so we have the abdominals here kind of creating their own lump here, and then the obliques kind of come back around. So I know that. And so when I do the contour here, I'm not just gonna do that. I'm gonna do this and then come back. Wait, okay. Come back and then do another bump here and then just kind of smooth that out like that, right? Because we can tell she's got some fat here that isn't showing, letting us see the other abdominals. Whereas if this was like a guy and he was very shredded, he had a very low body fat, we would still see a little cut here and all of that different indentation. So I went ahead and finished this one up for you all. So I want to show you what those lines look like. Here you can see I went ahead and did that. Something else I want you all to pay attention to while you're doing these is you want to follow through with the contour. And this is something that's really easy to forget. And you can see I've done it almost everywhere here. Remember when I drew the entire shape like that? It works because we made it perfectly curve around the form. But when you're just doing a portion of it, it's easy to forget and you end up doing something like that, which isn't really how it goes. You want to think about how it looks if you drew the whole thing. And if I drew the whole thing here, it would end up looking something like that. And you want to try to make sure those edges follow through. That's going to really help keep your brain engaged and keep you thinking about how this form actually looks in 3D space. You want to make sure you have that little curve showing how everything wraps around. And it's really easy to forget, but the more you do it, the more you'll remember. Again, this exercise is going to be dependent on your understanding of anatomy here. So like I said, with the stomach here and those abdominals, I made sure to put that there, even though it's hard to see. Whereas for you guys, and even here, I didn't really do it that well because this highlight suggests that it's going that way and then it's curving and then we've got another surface here. But that's just, yeah, you can get into that level of granularity if you want to, but you want to try and do as much as you can whenever you're doing this, because it can give you free anatomy understanding if you do it well enough. So if you do these a lot and you do it on other people's artwork where it's stylized, you can start to pick up certain cues that happen on the surface level of the body. And when you do these studies enough on especially really well lit gesture drawing packs with figures or nude figures, or just doing it with clothing, you start to learn a lot of things without even doing the nitty-gritty anatomy understanding. And so that's why this is super, super helpful. Another tip you want to do is before you even start doing these, and I'm hopefully going to be showing you the whole process for all of them, you want to find the freebies. So I'm going to hide this layer again. You don't want to just start off here on the arm like I did. Find the freebies. Those are going to help you get started. So for example, the biggest freebie I can see here is this one, right? For her underwear for her waist. Tells us exactly how this is going to wrap. It tells us it's not going like that. It tells us it's not going like that. It tells us it's going like this, right? Because remember, we know the normal, her body's going that direction. So we want to make sure this is perpendicular, and then we draw it like that. Now, the back side of her is probably going to look something more like that. If you want to really be, studious, try to imagine how the backside of the ellipse would look. But it's going to be like this, and it's simplified in the front because we've actually got some elastic tightening and smoothing everything out so we can make it a perfect ellipse in this case. So what that tells us is something very important that you should actually do right after you find the normals, and that is you want to find where the horizon line is. So the horizon line of the drawing, I'm going to hide this layer and show the orange one here. And you can see I found the horizon line here with this orange line, and you want to find that before you start these, because it tells you if you're looking at something from below it or from above. And if you're looking at something from below, that means you can see the underside of it, but you can't see the top. So for example, and as you can see here, we're looking at the bottom of the cylinder. We're looking at it from below. We can't see the top. And if it was here, we're looking at the top of the cylinder. We can't see the bottom. So that's going to tell you exactly how you should draw your contour lines, right? Because remember, these are all really just slices of the same cylinder, and every slice has a potential to be a top or a bottom depending on if we took the pieces above them away, right? So this is a top, so we're seeing the top of this. You know, this isn't the edge that we see, that's behind her. This is the edge that we see. This right here, I would really draw like this because it's behind her. Now it can be really tricky to find the horizon line. In this case, it was easy because we literally see where everything is vanishing, but an easy way to try to find it is to find the freebies like I mentioned here and recognize, okay, we're looking at this from above. If we could see her, if her arm wasn't there, we would see that her bra would show us that we're looking at it from below, and then we didn't know that it's in between these two places, because above the horizon line, we're going to look at it from below. Below the horizon line, we're looking at it from above. Now, the tricky thing is some areas are going to be in line with the viewer, which is us. So this arm, for example, is in line with us. It's horizontal. And since it's very close to the horizon line, this is even more important. So what happens is, I'll show you what I did before. These lines end up being almost perfectly horizontal. They're just basically lines. But as we see here, her arm is starting to curve away from us, especially once we get to the wrist. And so now we're getting to really see that ellipse like that here. But in this case, it's just directly in front of us. So it's almost perfectly just a line, right? If I were to cut this iPad in half, it would look like a perfect line. But if I were to turn it, you would see a tiny little rectangle slit like that if I were to draw the ellipse for the cross contour of this iPad. So let's go on to another example, and this one's going to be harder. And you might think, what's harder than this? Well, the harder thing is going to be actually looking at 3D objects, things that are made in 3D programs. And the thing with this and why they're harder is because a lot of times they can be stylized like this. And that really doesn't give us as much information. So if you look at her arm, it's just like a noodle, right? If you look at her hand, look at all the different things that are going on with my hand right now. But if you look at hers, it's just perfectly flat. And the thing with this and why it's harder is if you look at this, you might think, oh, okay, I'll just draw a flat line, but that's not the case. What's actually going on is they did actually model this division here, but we just can't see it at this particular angle. If you don't know as much anatomy or you don't pay as much attention, you'll do it like this. And next time you draw a hand, you'll think it's like that and it won't look good because the angle you might draw it at will reveal that you really need to be able to see the difference between these two forms here. So for this one, I went ahead and just tried to do it as fast as I could, focusing on as much as I could without having to do all the different prep work that I did. It is helpful though to do a kind of a outline for it. So I'll hide this and you can see there's an outline for the different parts where things overlap and where there's major material changes such as her skin, to her dress, to her hair. That's also good to include to help make sense of things when you finish. And you can see once you end up with the whole thing, you can very easily tell what it is. And even this stylized example from Genshin Impact, you can clearly see what's going on, and you even get a sense for her eyes there and her nose as well, right? But everything else is very smoothed out because, of course, even though we're zoomed in, it's very stylized. This shows you that even in your favorite anime style, this is still very, very important to think about things in 3D. Something that might help you out when you're doing this, though, is to think about keyframe points. The way to do that is to think of a beginning and end for those normal areas I talked about before. So in this case, we have a normal for her arm like that, right? It's going in that direction. Let's, instead of just going through it, you want to start off with a simple keyframe. So where it starts and where it kind of stops here, right? Then you've just got this joint piece. Same thing with this, where it starts and then where it stops. And we have a freebie here because her outfit actually has, a band that's going to show us how that ellipse look. Then you actually go through and you can create the different ellipses and contours as you need. And that's really helpful to know kind of a stopping point where you need to shift your thinking. I have another example from Genshin Impact here, and I want to go ahead and reduce this opacity so I can show you something else. Another tip we need to think about is acceleration and how things look when they're turning. So basically what this means is as something is having an exaggerated change in perspective, the contours are going to get a lot closer together. So this is basically foreshortening. If I have a tube here, and let's say it's going back into space, and let's say there's 4 contours on it. Well, I have to fit all 4 contours in a tiny space, right? I barely fit that last one. But let's say I do this, and we're looking at it from, let's say, slightly below, and we see the whole entire height of it. Not the full height, because we're still looking at it slightly at a perspective, and there's the same number of contours. Well, then it's easy. I can easily fit all 4 here. They're not perfectly spaced, but you can see there's a lot more space in between them. And that acceleration tells you when things are going back into space, aka foreshortening. Unfortunately, in this example, there's not too much foreshortening going on. To be honest, the only thing that's really being foreshortened a lot is her fingers on this side, but they're so small that you really wouldn't pay attention to it. But hopefully this is enough to tell you that not only can this help you with your understanding of 3D form and lighting and shading, which I'll mention in a second, but it's going to help you understand foreshortening. So something that I can show you with this Genshin Impact example is this concept of overlapping. And this is going to help you see your drawings better and understand what's actually going on when 2 things meet. So let's draw some for behind her head right here. Like this. This is pretty much straight aligned with the camera, so they're starting to get very straight here, and I'm ignoring the different parts of the hair so I can be fast. And this, just go all the way up. And so what happens here is we have this band here, and what you might be tempted to do is something like that. But instead, let's think about what happens when it goes, let's actually imagine it going under and wrapping around. When that happens, if we actually were to draw that, that line would end up somewhere else. And if we erase the part that we can't see, the line is actually above it a little bit. And that's really, really going to help your understanding of how this works in 3D. So when you do that once, you can just make an adjustment for every other part and draw it above. And that's what really enables this to look like how it should look when we actually hide everything. And we can actually tell exactly what's going on. And that really, really helps. And it's something that you should pay attention to. And when you have things that are just kind of right up against each other, you can literally just shift the line. So in some cases, you'll have something like this. Usually when it comes to cleavage is a good area to show this. You don't just do that. You want to show that it's going in and then coming out. And so sometimes you'll just have that kind of division where one is slightly higher or lower than the other, right? Even though they're the same line. And then that kind of overlap is really going to help you describe that form. If we go back to this first Genshin Impact example, we can see here how this actually helps with your shading. So what I'm actually going to do is create another layer if I can here. I'm using all my layers. Let's just use this one. And you can see here, there's this light patch that we have for her nose. Super stylized, super minimal, right? Well, that's there because they know, okay, the nose is going up right at this point. The skin and the face anatomy is just kind of curve around the face like this. And then it goes up to be the nose, right? And so because we know that and we've studied it, we know that when we're shading this, there has to be a change here. We can't just shade this the same tone. Same thing here. This is curving around and they've decided that this is really the main corner. Whereas in reality, this would be a much softer edge because it's a soft transition, but it's stylized, so it's probably a hard edge in their rendering engine. So with that, we know, okay, if I'm drawing this, I know I can't just make this all the same value, right? I have to have a gradation of values from here to here, and then I can make this a plane, make that, if I were to do the contours again, it would be straight, and then all of this would work out really nicely. By the way, if you're wondering what I was using to draw this entire time, it was just my iPad Pro, the 2021 model, Apple Pencil. I have an Ergo, not my own brand, unfortunately, grip on, and I'm using Paperlike as a screen protector. Super great, makes drawing super easy, especially when you're doing these long, straight, curvy lines. You really feel like you have more control, just like you would on a sheet of notebook paper. So with all that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Let me know if this has helped you out. Let me know if you're going to be using it in your own strategies, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.